Good afternoon, everybody. We're just getting started, and folks are coming on in. We'll take a minute or two. Wonderful. So we'll give it about one more minute. We're at 52 participants already, which is fantastic. Um, Great. So I think let's get started. Welcome. My name's Mark Bowman. I'm with the Field Museum. And my colleague Mark Johnston and Jack Brunner and the rest of us on the Chicago Wilderness mapping team are happy to present today's Mapping the Green Vision second cafe as we think about the Chicago Wilderness Hub. Mark, could you advance to the next slide? Today we're interested in seeing uh, why a map hub and how that relates to Chicago Wilderness's green vision. We're going to um, understand how the hub supports goal tracking and learn how data are incorporated into the hub, explore a demo in more detail than we did back in October. We've learned some things and are taking the next step, and raise some key questions and consider next steps for the hub. Next one, Mark. So we'll say a few things in just a moment about the logistics of this meeting today and how we're navigating our way through the Zoom environment today. Not everybody here is familiar with Chicago Wilderness or this particular project, so we'll give a little bit more background on where we are. And then the bulk of the time will be a presentation from Mark about the hub and a demonstration of it. And then we'll lead into a discussion and have time for a survey at the end. The next slide, please. We're now at 61 participants and 89 signed up, which is fantastic. And we'll do this a little differently than the last hub, the last cafe. We're going to not have breakout sessions today. We'll do this as in webinar style, a little bit more presentation. This puts for you participants, it means that you are all currently muted and your videos can't be seen. We can unmute you when the time comes. And we'll hope to have a good discussion, which we'll do via the Q&A feature that you see at the bottom of your screen for content-related questions. Only use the chat if you have sort of technical questions like, are you hearing me, or what's up with this, or something got lost in translation. You can raise your hand. Once we get rolling here with the presentation, we'll have somebody watching these different functions. Generally speaking, the Q&A, you can type in your questions, and Jack Brunner will be moderating that and maybe answering some as we go and holding some for discussion later with the group. We've got a small panel at the moment, but we can, if someone has more to say, we can promote someone to panelists to be part of the group conversation here, so we can be sure some questions are answered. You might want to consider, if you go to the far up right-hand side at the top of your screen, you have a view feature. You might want to change that feature to focus only on the speaker or see all the panelists if you'd like. We've got a couple of polls. You see at the bottom of your screen the poll feature as well. We are recording today's meeting, and we also are going to try to live stream ourselves today. That just means it's live on the Chicago Wilderness outlets. And part of this is to see how this goes. I want to highlight that on February 17th, Carolyn Finney will be a featured speaker. She was to be the featured speaker at Chicago Wilderness's Congress last April, and we're glad she will definitely be worth the wait. And live streaming is a possibility for that talk as well. So we're going to see how that goes today. Next one, Mark, please. So again, just our goal for the day, and the next, Mark, is the agenda. Go to the next screen. And next one. So we've got a poll to get us started. I'm going to open up a poll just to see who's here today. And if you would tell me when you see this, or don't tell me, just answer the question. Are you familiar with Chicago Wilderness's Green Vision? And were you able to attend the prior MAP Café? And I can see some of the answers starting to surge in already. We're now up to 72 participants. This is working great. So what I'm seeing here, let's give it just about 10 more seconds. Thank you, everybody, for going to the polls and exercising your Chicago Wilderness right to respond. 3/4 of you are familiar with the Chicago Wilderness Green Vision, so that's great. I will, for those of you who said you aren't, I'll make a brief overview of what this is. And this is the second question is also very helpful for us today. Only 1/4 of you were able to attend the prior cafe. So a lot of you are familiar with the vision, but didn't hear the previous presentation about the hub. So I think that's going to help us frame how we work through the comments today. So the next slide, Mark. So let's go then to some quick background and context. What is this thing? Next. Now, you know, Chicago Wilderness is this wonderful alliance across the region, has built a culture of collaboration on many things and has helped to foster a concept of region that rises above the, so I'm going to stop sharing the results here and close that. Okay. Rises above the many political boundary lines that run across the region and has inculcated an ethic of conservation across this region, and has had a lot to do with mapping over time, the wonderful Atlas of Biodiversity, the Biodiversity Recovery Plan, the various updates to the plan, and then especially very important is the green infrastructure visioning process that went through 2 major iterations to get us to the map that you see on the lower left. If you connected up all the high priority green spaces across the region, what would you get? You would get 1.8 million acres if you fulfilled that vision. But we realize that when you look at that vision, that's almost 6 million acres that is not included. And there are where many people live, work, and play. And Chicago Wilderness is working nonstop these days to expand the vision and deepen it so that people engaged from all walks of life can be part of it. All habitats are integrated in healthy nature. What is green? It might be different shades of green, depending if you're a residential, a corporate and institutional landowner, or a land manager of conservation space, but it works for everybody. The next one, Mark. And so here is the statement of the Green Vision. Diverse members working together for vibrant nature that improves environmental and human health, promotes better quality of life, and benefits our collective home for today and for generations to come. Next, please. Now, in order to get there, it's important to, that's a great vision, but how do we know that we're moving from one step to the next? And what, over the last year or so, what Chicago Wilderness has been engaged in is really trying to specify what this means so that it can be tracked and accounted for, so that the public is aware of what is happening. Funders understand how steps are taken to move forward. There are 7 collective goals. This is going to be highly relevant to this hub conversation. So the 7 goals, these first 3 are really about the landscape itself. And you can see we're adding up to about 7.7 million acres. Some of those are the 500,000 already under green space under active management. And we'd like to see improvements in that. There are many agricultural lands. This morning, there was a meeting of the group that is convened around this second goal of agriculture to see what it means to make this more environmentally friendly. The third goal is about the built up landscapes that are residential and corporate and rights of way across the region. Next one, Mark. There are 4 other goals. Conservation land itself could be added to in the region. The 5th one, a very important goal that has to do with how people do benefit, these diverse voices across the region. How are they accessing the benefits of green? What is green to them? How can our partnership best support everybody involved in the conversation? An important background, I think, to Carolyn Finney's talk. And then 2 other goals that handle super important issues across the region are waters and the question of climate resilience. Now, if you go to the next one, you'll see that along the way, this suggests if we're going to track our progress on these goals, we need to have good data. And as it turns out, since the last time the green infrastructure vision was updated, about nearing almost 10 years ago now, much new data is available. There's a lot more local data. There's community science, Project Budburst, iNaturalist, Seek, the various eBird, the various ways that people are contributing data to the questions of how we know what we're doing. And there's many great new ways, like the one we're about to show you, about ways to interact in these spaces. Next one, Mark. So in October, Chicago Wilderness has now got groups gathered around each of the 7 goals to consider sharpening those statements of what the goals are and what will it take to advance in each of those areas. Now, those can be expressed geographically. And so at the same time, there's been a mapping group that's been gathered here, including representatives of the major regional planning agencies in Wisconsin, Indiana, and Illinois, Openlands, Argonne National Labs, the Field Museum have been part of these conversations. Today, I think we're getting to the point where we want to see how to expand that conversation. We had a first cafe in October. We kind of checked in, like, are we good here? And there was a lot of support for the idea of sustaining a hub. A lot of folks said, hey, what about this or that data layer? And you'll see that we've begun to really assemble a large database of data layers. Many offers of support to pitch in and help out, and we'll try to come to those later. Since that time, as this morning, there was a meeting with the folks thinking about group goal number 2, the agricultural goal. Other teams have been meeting and how to think about creating interactions between the people thinking on a particular strand of goals and how to map that. This is part of our task, is to figure out how best to do that. Chicago Wilderness is moving forward in that area to create supports for facilitating these processes as they go forward. And this is very much a part of that. And then, not least, is the idea that the green infrastructure vision itself, this way of gathering data, of creating a platform to interact, being sure it aligns with and supports all the goals, is prerequisite to then considering how we do a green infrastructure vision for the new decade. So Mark, let's go to the next slide, and also let's go to Mark. So along the way here, any questions, a reminder, please type your questions in the chat. Jack is watching that. I'll be seeing if folks are raising their hands, and we'll come to you in the discussion period that we'll come to after Mark makes his presentation. So Mark, please.
Excellent, thank you, Mark. 2 marks. All right, so jumping in here, this slide will probably look familiar to some of you. For the 25% of the folks who said that they did attend the last CW Café on mapping, this is a part of the primer for that. So let's see. So I wanted to talk about, so Esri is really the leading GIS software provider. They're essentially like the Microsoft of the mapping world. And so Esri Hub is one of their products. It's their latest software that's geared towards collaboration access and really working with between organizations and with stakeholders. So it was developed to handle things like the opioid epidemic in major cities. And that's where city departments really needed to be able to collaborate closely with each other and their constituents. And it's also born out of something that they had before that's called Open Portal. And so this is really, it's for sharing a repository of GIS data. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how we'll incorporate some of those into this prototype as well. And we think that with both the collaborative nature of this software and the data sharing aspects, make this an ideal candidate for what we're trying to accomplish with this platform. All members will be able to access and use this for doing basic GIS, and it'll be able to help us track our progress towards the shared goals and visualize our opportunities. It'll help with finding out where there are gaps and where more support is needed. And then, as you can see, the main page prominently features the 7 goals that Mark talked about earlier. So obviously those are front and center as kind of the most important thing. So just to talk briefly about purpose, we see the purpose, as I mentioned earlier, of CW Hub is really first and foremost to support those 7 goals and to track their progress towards them. We also see it as a framework to assist with the social and ecological prioritization of our work. Our hope is that it will also integrate well with the main CW website. So there's obviously lots of events and things that are happening at CW, and those are well announced through the CW website. It'd be great to integrate together and make sure folks are flowing back and forth between the 2 sites. And then our combined organizations, we really want them to be able to work together and share their expertise and collaborate on building and also maintaining the system after it's up. So as Mark mentioned, at the last CW Café, there was that meeting, and then there are also lots of other listening sessions. So like with the corporate council, the steering committee, executive committee, all of these meetings were great for getting some input into the what the CW community sees as important. And one of those things that came out, from mining the notes and conversations was this list of data layers. So part of this is out of our heads, but it's also what we were able to pull from those meetings and notes. And this could be used to begin the process of building out a database repository. And obviously this is a very much of a sketch, a draft, but we'll want to dig in and start to find these different layers and start to put them together into this system. From this, we have also started to tag each of the different layers. So that's what you're seeing in these columns. There's the 7 different goals that are shown, and also like the data sources and whether there's live connections to these data. And what's great about the tags is we can use them to clearly see where there's overlap between goals. And so tags will allow us to capture that overlap and not just kind of put them into a single category. And I'll show during the demo kind of how that works a little bit and in the next few slides. I should mention that if working with data layers piques your interest and or any of the different goals for that matter, we're going to have a survey that's going to be at the end of this webinar, and we'll share a link to that where you can get involved. So you can put in your contact information, and you can also just give us feedback on this webinar. So you can do that anonymously, or you can put your name in and actually let us know that you're interested in helping out. So if a repository like this is compiled and layers are tagged, they can then be served out via the hub. So let me show you what that kind of looks like. So this is a screen snap from the prototype hub. And the idea here is that when users click on an icon to access one category, they'll be able to pull up the layers that were tagged for that category. And in this design, users can also add new data layers, and they can tag them themselves and put in their geographic locations that are pertinent to the data that they're uploading. And we'll try to look at that during the demo as well. So then when you click on one of those icons and you choose one of the layers, you can access the data and kind of review it. You can look at the metadata. So highlighted here, for example, it tells you a little information about that layer. And then you can download it. So you can choose whatever format, shapefile, spreadsheet, Excel. You can download that layer to get it into your GIS if you have one. There may be even ways to directly link it to your own, if you're a GIS organization and have your own sort of hub or your own shared resources, you can put these links in directly, so they're a live link to the data. Great. So I wanted to give you an idea of going back to that kind of main page. Each of these links, each of these goals has a link to a page with an interactive map, and that has key data layers related to the goal. So in this example, agricultural areas, since this goal tracks regenerative agricultural practices, we've got the different ag crop layers, or the agricultural lands showing up on the screen here in the little sort of broken out area. Sorry, up here in the top right. But what's also nice is that users can temporarily add their own data layers. So in thinking of that, repository that we're talking about building, you could pull in layers from that and decide what you want to add. So you're kind of able to do your own GIS and to access some of those tools. The sun is blaring on us here. Next slide. So, okay, digging into this a little bit deeper to talk about base and opportunity layers, we're going to look at one example. So we think about one important concept of this is that with base layers and opportunity layers, we can have, for each of the goals, we can then begin to figure out kind of what's most important to that goal and put those layers into the map. In this example, for goal 4, land acquisition, the base layers might include things like protected lands, so like the forest preserves, habitat areas, maybe in places like the Chicago Park districts, easements, a variety of things. And then for opportunity layers, we might think about things like vacant lots, floodplain areas, priority areas, the oak ecosystem layers that Chicago Wilderness and Morton Arboretum have already compiled, watershed plans that have been done. So there's a lot of information that could get pulled in. And so these are the kinds of things we've got, as Mark mentioned earlier, there's working groups in each one of these goals. And these will be some of the things that they'll want to identify what's the key information that needs to be included for that goal. Along those lines, we also have, we want to track our progress. So having one or more status layers will be important to see our progress towards reaching our goals. Counting with, continuing with the goal 4 example, we're hoping that we can be able to track progress on a parcel basis. And in general, we're hoping to do that across all the goals, is do this at a parcel level, maybe not as much for the people goals and climate change. But yeah, parcel level would be great. And the three main planning agencies have already given us a great start because they have parcel-based land use information. So we can use, you can use that as a great starting point for some of the goals. Depending on what the goal teams decide, we may also want to capture user input in the status of property areas via interactive maps. And we can dynamically graph things like the areas protected over time to help establish our baseline in progress. So this example graph is for protected areas of Illinois, actually, of all of Illinois. And it relies on the date when the areas became protected, which unfortunately, it's an incomplete data set. We don't have all those dates yet. So this is a great place where collaboration might be helpful to populate some of those dates. And what that does then is it gives us an ability to figure out what the baseline looks like. So that baseline might continue to change as we add in more dates. We'll see when those came online prior to 2020, and we'll be able to see how that baseline changes. And what that does, though, is we don't want to have to spend too much time spending the next 5 years figuring out our baseline for all of these goals. If we can kind of compile the baseline as we move forward by bringing in dates and things to help us understand how much we currently have, and that'll give us an ability then to look at what the opportunities are to do more. All right, I'll keep moving along here. So again, taking this concept of opportunity areas and current status, these maps that you see here are showing side-by-side maps that illustrate the current opportunities across all goals. So on the left, the current status would show, right now it's just showing like the green vision as an example. But it could show what those opportunities are that have been identified through each one of the different 7 goals and with those working groups. And then on the right, you could have what that status looks like. And what's neat is if you zoom into one map, the other map stays in sync with it. So again, right now, these are just placeholders, but we could put those layers in. We could also have just one layer, one big map, and kind of have a bar that you move back and forth to swipe one layer on and off and compare that status to the, again, to the opportunities. All right, great. So I'm gonna switch over and do a quick demo if I can get to my other screens.
A reminder while you do that, Mark, that if you have questions about data or any other sort of questions about the content here, pop that in the Q&A, and technical questions, put those in the chat. The good question here about
we do have a good
source. Yeah.
Yeah, we do have some good questions coming in. One of them about the parcel-based information and what that data source would be for this.
Yeah, so what's great, as I mentioned before, the 3 planning agencies have land use based, parcel-based land use, which is great. But what do we do in those areas outside of those 3 major planning agencies? And so we may need to go with like a service. I know there's a lot of services out there that have all the parcels already mapped out. But also, I mean, just working with the CW community, we might be able to compile a lot of that information ourselves. So I'm going to keep moving on here. So I've got open the, are you able to see my screen again? This should be showing you now the CW Hub. Yeah, Mark's giving me the thumbs up. Okay, so this is the main page, and you can see those 7 goals again are featured here. One thing I want to call to your attention is this follow unfollow button down here near the bottom right. And what that is you can click on that. So I'm logged in currently. If I wasn't, I'd click on that. I would say follow, and it would prompt me for a login. If I have an Esri login, I could use that. If I don't, which is probably most folks, you can use a Facebook account, you could use a Google account, or you can just create a new account using your email. And so that would give you what's called an Esri community account. And then by clicking on that, or by having that, you would then be able to see this additional content. So otherwise this wouldn't show, you wouldn't see the data repository. So now that you're logged in, you can begin to do things like download layers. So I clicked on that first one, and this is giving me a list of kind of what's in the data repository. Of course, right now it's pretty empty because we're just getting started. But let's see, let's say we wanted the CW boundary. It just kind of pulls that up, takes it a minute to load. But there you go, it's showing what that shapefile looks like, and then you got the option to download it into the format that you like. And we can also add this to maps, as we'll see in a little bit here. All right, I'm gonna back out of that. Okay, so each one of these, again, it gives you a filtered list for that goal, the GIS data that is relevant to that goal. What's really neat also is we can have people upload their own data. So you can, I should move my camera over here. So you can click on this form, and it pops up, this is survey 123 for the GIS folks out there, but you simply fill out, your contact information in the first part here. But what's kind of cool is you can then say, okay, I want to upload a geodatabase or a shapefile or a PDF. It could be actually links to a website where there's a report, maybe like let's say the BRP, like the Biodiversity Recovery Plan. And then you can also even link to REST endpoints for the GIS folks out there. You put in descriptions about it, what year is relevant. And then I think this is kind of cool. You can say, okay, this is for the whole CW region. Users might want to only select for those sort of regional data layers that are covering the entire geography, or maybe that's a certain county. So if you click on counties, you can then select, okay, which counties are the relevant ones for this data layer that I'm uploading. Maybe it's not a county, maybe it's a municipality. So, whoops, what did I just do there? Municipality. So then you can just type in those municipalities. I don't know if we could do a drop down here, but there's so many, we'll have to think through how best to do that. And then you could also do like, okay, what about the specific location? Probably not Melbourne, Australia, where it's defaulting. But you can click and say, okay, my default location, so Field Museum. So I can zoom in, and then I can say, okay, it's for the race gardens, and put the point there. You can also just, hey, I want to look at this as a orthophoto, so I can get a better sense of where I am. So you can add that point, tell it where the data set is. And then probably one of the most important things are these tags. So now you can tag it to, this is a goal 1 tag, or it's a goal 3 end. You can just kind of select on and off whichever tags are relevant for it. Is this ecological data? Is it a conservation opportunity? So those are all things you can add as you submit it. And then what happens after you submit is it goes into kind of a holding spot where the team can kind of look it over. And this is where it'd be great if we have maybe someone who's a GIS-like person who's on the different teams to maybe help us vet some of the data. Obviously, mainly we just want to make sure the content is good quality and that we can add it to the repository. But then that would just go into this repository, and it's available for folks to use. How's our time? Let's see, I think we're doing pretty good still. I'm gonna show you then, this was the idea of the opportunity maps versus the current status. So here you can kind of zoom in a little bit, you can move the map around, and they kind of track each other. We probably would want to make this bigger and have a lot more layers, but it's just in concept, you can have kind of dual themes going on there. Some other quick things, these are different applications that you can integrate into this. So this would allow for us to like collect user data. This is like for folks who know about, restoration map back in the day, this was something that we were toying around with, that users could actually, enter in where they're doing restoration work. Where's my edit layer? So I could say, you can go in and just do some digitizing, so some live GIS on these layers. So we can integrate a lot of different things like that. There's, through Morton Arboretum, we've already been doing some work together on where witness trees are and setting the status of those, and PDFs regarding canopy cover, and it's a lot of great interactive capabilities. Regional story maps. So this gives us the idea to tell a story about, so this is the gathering spaces. The Field Museum's been working on. I know other organizations have been creating these as well. So we can feature all of those different types of story maps. And then just sort of calling out our key data providers and providing links to those. So I know we're probably getting a little short now in time. I'm gonna zoom up and look at one of these goals. Let's see, which one should I pick? I think we were looking at goal 2 earlier today. I'll click on that one. And I gotta get into the published mode instead of edit mode. There we go. So regenerative agriculture. So we were running some numbers on this and figuring out how much there is for agriculture. As I mentioned before, we've got data for the 3 planning agencies, but we still need all these other areas outside of it. So what would be great is when these organizations, or when these different working groups are meeting to help identify where some of those data sources might be, would also be helpful. I just want to call out a few quick different kinds of tools that we can have here. So we looked at, you can change things like the base map here. There can be bookmarks. So it looks like I didn't set those, sorry, but the bookmarks could zoom you into different regions, Calumet, City of Chicago, and whatnot. This slider tool, we kind of played with this earlier, but you can have one layer that's showing and another one that's maybe underneath it. So this would then allow you to sort of peel back one and see the next. And then this is what I think is super cool is we built out this great big repository that we've talked about. Let's say that was done. Anything that's coded as goal 2 would show up on this list. And then you can just go in and add that data layer to the map and work with that additional data layer. And so then you can have all these different data layers in here. You can turn them on and off. So there's that one we just added. I'm going to turn it off now. So anyway, it gives, particularly for people who don't have GIS, this puts it in the hands of anyone. Anyone can come in and do this. It's really easy to do, and you can look at the data yourself. Obviously, this is just showing some base layers, so we'd want to put on top of this those opportunities and those tracking layers. Now, tracking layers, just one other thing I want to point out is that, so this one, I don't have any tracking showing up on it, so I'm going to back out to the main site again. Let's see, I think I have under goal 4, and actually we saw this in the PowerPoint, but the idea that we could have interactive graphs that are showing the status. So this is pulling live from the data. And again, we need to put in those other dates so we can get this more fleshed out and clip it to the Chicago region. But we can track these things live and sort of see how our performance is doing. All right, I'm going to switch back to slides and see where we're at. We finished the, I think we're going to go to a poll next, right? Is that? Okay, I'm gonna put another poll into the chat or into the screen here. How do I do this? Poll 2. All right, you should have. If it's not popping up on your screen, then I think there's a poll button at the bottom of your screen that you can click on to get it to pop up. And there's just I think 3 questions here, real simple.
You want to talk through the questions?
Oh, sure. So the first one is, how likely is it that your organization would upload data to a shared CW data repository? So do you think you or your organization might upload GIS data or reports? And then the second question is kind of the reverse. What's the likelihood of you downloading these data and working with it and using it? And we could also say, either downloading it and using it on your own system, or actually just going into one of those interactive maps and loading the data there. So we'll add that caveat that if you want to use it online, you could do it there too. And then thirdly, how useful do you think the interactive maps for each goal will be for you and your organization? Cool. We've got 57 out of 70, about 80% have responded so far. I'll just give it a few more seconds here. Mark, what do we have after this? I think we're going to talk about some discussion questions, right?
Yeah, we've got a few questions, and then I think we'll open it up, and Jack can help guide us to answer some of the questions, and maybe some folks want to see something more about a particular feature or something, but that'll take us up to time.
Yeah.
Okay. And if I click on end polling, will it then share the results with everyone?
Yep.
Okay, great. I'll do that now.
And click share results.
Right. Share results. There we go. So it looks like we've got, for the first question, people are either very likely or somewhat likely to upload data. That's great, about 40% of each. And then for the second question, downloading, it looks like about 59% say very likely, another 36 say somewhat likely. And then it looks like people, about 57% thought that the interactive maps would be very useful, and another 41% thought somewhat useful. So great, thank you for that, and we'll continue from there.
That is very
Anything
helpful.
else, Mark?
No, I think we should just move to the next one. And
great. Do you want? Yeah, I'll read through these real quick. And I think we don't have time to obviously talk about each one of these, so we're just gonna read them off, and then we'll open it up for discussion. If you want to bring any of these topics back up again, feel free to do so. And again, you can use your Q&A, or you can raise your hand to ask a live question. Okay, so related to the CW Hub build out, how can we coordinate work in the CW goal working groups with mapping in the CW Hub? How can we compile GIS data outside of the 3 primary planning agencies? How best can we review and maintain data layers, especially from those user uploads through that form that I was showing? And how will the ongoing process for capturing new data and new versions of data work? Then thinking about sort of scope and function. So what elements might require a higher level of access for CW members, and what should be open access? So just something we're playing around with. Would this make sense to help drive membership if we provided some sort of extra features for the CW members, or do we think it should just be open to everyone entirely? I think at least at some level, we'd want to have it open to everyone. Probably for most of those features. How might the next steps with planning and green infrastructure be integrated into the CW Hub platform? And so things like the GIV, of course. And what is the role for community science data like iNaturalist and eBird? Field Museum is currently leading the CW Hub development, but where should this live in the future, like in the next maybe year or 2 years, or maybe we even build it out from the beginning if we have enough funding in a common space. So things to think about, and from that, I think we will switch over to discussion.
Want me to kick things off with a few questions, Mark? Will that work?
Yeah,
that'd be great.
All right. Yeah, a lot of good questions coming in. Some of them are related. Some bigger picture questions, maybe a little more administratively. Good suggestion from Jim Anderson about sharing the list of attendees. Jim, rather than doing that through the chat, I think logistically it'll be better to share that information in an Excel spreadsheet to all the attendees. So thanks for that suggestion. We'll definitely do that. Also, regarding the sharing of information here, got a question mark about, we've got this draft list of layers that you have right now, and is that something that can be shared with people? I think that would be it's a great idea to get them thinking about types of data that they may have that could be useful to this, and what we've already got incorporated in there. I showed it pretty quickly up there, but that's something we can share.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I've been thinking how best to do that. Maybe what the best thing to do would be to share it with particularly the leads of each of the different working groups, and then anyone else. Again, we're going to send out a survey at the end here, so anyone who has particular interest in it, let us know. Like, put that in the survey, and we can get you plugged in.
Yeah. Another.
Sorry, I'm just going to put the link to that survey now, so folks can kind of see that if they'd like. I'm putting it in chat, and so there's a link there.
And regarding that, Mark, as far as that information you just posted, does that contain information about how people can, join one of the working groups, and how?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The survey, I would indicate it on the survey, I think, as in a general space there, and we'll make sure you get directed to the right folks on that.
Okay, good. Yeah, that was another good question we got. A couple other things here. Mark, you talked about, one of the features of this is being able to share data and download things. One of the questions is if someone has what they think might be useful GIS or data sets, but it's in a non-GIS format, is that something that can be done as part of this?
Great question. Yeah, I like that question. So I think that's part of the thought, is that depending on how much GIS support we can get, either from the CW community or through funding, to have like a grad student or someone to help out on the GIS end, for sure. If it's got information in there, spatial information in just a text format or in any spreadsheet kind of format, yeah, that can be spatialized. If it's like for municipalities or for some geographic zip codes or wards or neighborhoods, all those things could be, turned into GIS layers.
Well, and the other element of that is maybe there's information that isn't spatial inherently.
Yeah, that too.
And so I think one first answer to that is that this is sort of the thing that the goal teams are grappling with right now. How to measure progress, and what are the things that will help best to measure that. So you can imagine, an opinion survey on open lands across the Chicago region or something like that. Something like that might be non-spatial, but it still might be something you want to track someplace. Seems like those are the folks who would first surface those, but I'm sure that there are other things like that this will enter into the conversation. We'll make sure we got them tracked. And as you can see, the hub is a place to put spatial and non-spatial data.
Yeah. And
I think those sort of larger scale data sets are going to be the ones that are particularly important to include, and the ones that are also really important for the different goals. We'll want to, make sure that kind of data gets into the system. Yeah, go ahead, Jack. Sorry.
No, that's fine. And again, related to that, as far as, folks being interested in sharing, which is awesome to see here. Do you have suggestions for any type of particular mapping software or tutorials that people could maybe start looking at now in anticipation of, participating more actively down the road and sharing their data?
Yeah, good question. So in the free realm, there's like QGIS, I think is a popular one. We use Esri products at Field Museum, so I don't use a lot of those other software options, but there are a lot. So I would just say check it out. You can also get trial versions of GIS, like Esri software as well, and they have a lot of tutorial videos. They have a whole sort of training school, if you will, a catalog of training, and a lot of those are free. So Yeah, and looks like someone's dropping in.
Yeah, thank you, Cassie.
Yeah, QGIS is excellent.
Yeah.
Oh, good. All right.
Yeah.
Again, great to see, people being interested in sharing too, right? That's what we're trying to do here, is collect the information. Let's see. We have a technical question here. Would it be possible to include layers based off GBIF? Are you familiar with that? And is that something that could be done?
GBIF.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yes, so GBIF is like this great big global biodiversity database, and it has things like all the iNaturalist data is incorporated into it, or a lot of it, I think, and eBird. So yeah, can we pull those in? I would have to look into that. That's an interesting idea. I think that would be a great idea. We could maybe clip it obviously to our region. We've already looked into how to do that with iNaturalist, and we could do periodic downloads of all the iNaturalist data and push that up. But yeah, I hadn't thought about doing that for GBIF, so it's a great suggestion. We can look into it.
Mm-hmm. Another good suggestion here from Carter, talking about just that there's so many Chicago and Cook County agencies that have been involved with green infrastructure data layers, things like that, and having agencies like MWRD and CDOT and Park District Forest Preserves involved and connected is important. And these are organizations that are involved in Chicago wilderness, and it's certainly a priority for us to reach out to them and get the right data layers through forums like this and otherwise. Any other comments or thoughts on that from either of the Marks?
Good point. It's related.
Yeah, I think
Tim's point. I would just say.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, and I'd say the other thing is we'd love to explore, particularly for some of those bigger departments like City of Chicago and the planning agencies, like if there's a way, and I think there is a pretty strong one within the hub format to work kind of behind the scenes together and keep those data layers up to date. And so we can really kind of have a core team, if you will, that can work together to behind the scenes. So we do want to, seek those opportunities out and connect as much as we can. So yeah, reach out to us, and we want to hear from you.
Yeah, certainly. If anyone on the call today has, connections or ideas on how to best get that information, either include that in the survey or reach out as well. Great information. A couple things just reflective of some of the things we're sort of grappling with, and I think you mentioned too, sensitive data, and vetting access to that. I think you commented on that during your presentation, Mark, but that is something that we are aware of, and we'll work into the hub as well. Any other thoughts on that, or any help we might need on that front, do you think?
Yeah, it's an interesting problem. The database that we were just working on prior to this one is called the Rights of Way as Habitat database. I mean, it was for the Rights of Way as Habitat working group that Iris Caldwell at UIC has been leading, and we've helped to put a database together for them. And a lot of you might not think of it, but a lot of the Rights of Way data is sensitive data. They don't necessarily want to share, where their power lines are going. And where their substations are and things, because there's some vulnerability. But anyway, long story short, we've taken data that's very specific, and then we generalize it. And so there's opportunities to do that. But really good point, about if people are uploading data, we need to make sure that data isn't sensitive, that's just being shared, with the general public, if it needs to be kept from just widely sharing it. So yeah, important things to think about.
Yeah.
I'd say again that, a lot of those conversations have to start within these goal groups, and this will help us sustain focus because there's so many ways that this could go. And like how to measure quality management, of course, is a big question that's bedeviled folks for a long time. So what's the appropriate level to take that question? How deeply to go? And what needs to be shared with the entire world, and what needs to be shared with the community of ecologists and land managers, is something that I hope we get their advice on.
Yeah.
Yeah, one other thought about that. iNaturalist, I know, has you can take the data point and then say this is sensitive. I don't know if everybody's aware of that, but then it does, when they share it, it actually it just sort of generalizes the data.
Fudges it,
Yeah, it fudges a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's,
Do you know if
tools
does like eBird have something similar to that?
I don't know. Any eBird folks want to chime in on that? I'm not sure.
Yeah. Jeff Mangler also mentioned Herp Mapper as another potential source of good information for us.
Yeah, that's great.
I guess how are we doing on time? We're coming up here. But I guess a general question, about how accessible the current hub is. And right now we're sort of working behind the scenes, right? There's not a place where people can access it at this point.
Yeah, not currently.
Right.
And that might be a question to put towards the top of the agenda.
Yeah.
Of how soon can we, even just for demo purposes or for further purposes like meetings like this, for folks to kind of get in and play and see what can and can't be done and how it could be useful. When can we go live, and what's appropriate to share and what isn't yet?
Right.
That might be a good way to lead to one of my next questions, which is, where next? What do we do next? Obviously talking with the executive council next week is one step, and with these different goal groups, but we'll need some help. Unfortunately, there's only one Mark Johnston, and we wish there were many more of him, but we've got lots of help on our committee, and lots of folks in the community even today who I know are willing and able to help contribute. So we're getting to the point of figuring out what that bigger conversation is. I do think if we could get something live in a reasonable order, we're in a timing that's appropriate, we're making a nice step towards advancing this conversation and teeing up whether we have another cafe on that when that's live or something like that. So just thinking out loud about next steps there. A reminder, I did put a link to the chat, to the survey in the chat. Please, we're eager to hear your interest in next steps and involvement on this. Any other questions that have come in, Jack?
Just, sort of emphasizing the importance of, other existing data layers out there, especially at the county level. A couple folks commented on that, and certainly we'd be looking to incorporate that information as best we can into the hub as well. Let's see what else. And then, yeah, as far as, good question from Susan here about, who's going to update status layers, things like that. Again, something we're grappling with as part of this process and the rollout. And we'd be looking for feedback as we answer those questions.
Yeah, what makes it feedback. Sustainable?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and then contact emails for the marks. So, but I think getting your information, your questions, things like that into the survey that we have out here is a good way to do that as well and get involved.
I'm really grateful for everybody's participation today. I think of course, we all are. And of course, Mark, who did a huge heavy lift here to get ready for today. And Laura and Maria at CW, appreciate all of that. Thank you everybody for coming. We will be getting out back a vetted list of who was here today, and also some thoughts on next steps, and stay tuned. This is really, it's really fun stuff to be involved with and with all of you. So have a great day.
Thanks
so much.
We're done.
Bye.